I'm feeling embarrassed. We just talked about this. Your last appearance was 11 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. That was,
11 years ago.
It was that long. It's weird as a comic when you're sitting up in the green room and you're thinking like, all right, so I'm going to follow a lengthy discussion about the decimation of the Native Americans. That's a great lead-in. Here we go.
But it's Johnny Depp for him.
I know. It was great. I didn't get to see him. He ran away from me immediately.
Now, to talk about the podcast and the origin of the podcast and what it's grown to, it's like a thing.
Yeah, the podcast.
Now, first of all, for people like me, and I know what it is now, kinda. What are we talking about? Let's define some terms.
Well, it's much like this show, only a much smaller production that takes place in my garage. It was born out of complete desperation and failure. What I did was I started interviewing comics and people I know in my garage, and it became very popular. I interviewed a lot of people that you know Robin Williams, Gary Shandling, Richard Lewis, Jimmy Walker.
Stars in comedy.
Oh, yeah, they come to my garage.
So you interview them, and then what would you do with the interviews? What, you have that?
Well, then, like magic, we put it on the computer, and then people can go and upload it onto their computer or their iPod.
But how did they know that it was even there?
I have no idea, Dave.
But somehow, I guess word of mouth.
Well, you know, Twitter, and people would, sort of network it, and it got popular, and it's very exciting because I didn't know where my career was going at that time, and then this thing that I did in my garage, gets hugely popular. I interview, like I do hour interviews. I don't know, like that's a long time.
No, but I think that's great. It gives you time to settle in and find a rhythm and do some exploration.
Yeah.
How many of these shows have you done? The
400.
400. Now, which ones come to mind? Mel Brooks, Carl Reiner, I know.
Yes, I did Mel Brooks, I did Carl Reiner, I did Dick Van Dyke. Now, obviously, if you're over 80, I'm not going to have you to the garage. I will go to wherever you are. I don't expect you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, well, Mel, we can't do it unless you can schlep up to the house, right? So I get an opportunity to interview Mel Brooks, which is amazing. He's a comic hero of mine, and it was hilarious, okay? So what happens is I get this opportunity to go to his office and interview him. Now, I know he talks a lot about himself in a lot of different venues, so I don't usually do research. I just like to talk. Right. But with him, I did a lot of research, and I'm driving over, and I still don't know, how I'm going to approach it. And on my way over, I realized, well, he's a Jew, I'm a Jew, I'm just going to go full Jew, all right? And
sure.
Right, yeah, and you listen to that interview, and within 5 minutes, I'm literally talking like, oh, you kidding me? Of course I remember World War II. We were there together, Well, here's what happens. So it's just me and Mel, and there's no one there but him and I, so it's very candid. He's not really performing. We have a nice conversation. He takes a liking to me, and he says, you should have a talk show on television. So I said, okay, call somebody. So, but then he says, you should talk to Carl. And I go, Carl Reiner. And he goes, yes, Carl Reiner. I'd love to talk to Carl Reiner. He says, I'll set it up. And I go, how is Carl Reiner? And Mel Brooks goes, well, he's about 80%. Okay. Now, Carl's like 91. Mel is like 87.
91?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
So I go over to Carl's house. It's hilarious. All right. I talk to Mel. He walks me to my car, which was hilarious. We have no time for that. So
I appreciate the self-editing.
Very good story. Maybe 11 years from now. So I drive to Carl Reiner's house. I'm greeted by his manager and nephew, George Shapiro, who's in his 70s.
Yes.
We walk in. I set up my mic and my boom. Carl comes down, and George Shapiro immediately sits across from us and falls asleep. Okay, so Shapiro is sleeping. I'm talking to Carl, and there's a publicist on the couch. We have this nice interview. Everything's great. In the middle of the interview, Carl says, do you know how many Jews there are involved in Broadway musicals? And I said, I have no idea. I imagine a lot. He goes, a lot. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I watched a show on it. There's a big list at the end of the Jews in Broadway musicals. I'm going to show you this list. And I'm like, great. Sounds great. So.
Really?
Yeah. So now, of course, during the whole conversation, Shapiro's sleeping the whole time. So we finished talking, and of course, Shapiro is the first guy to go, that was a great interview.
Well, that's what a manager does.
That's a good manager,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So now Carl's playing with the remotes. He's got 2 remotes to show me the list of Jews. and Shapiro out of nowhere goes, is there ice cream? All right. So now Shapiro goes, he gets a box of Weight Watchers ice cream sandwiches. Now We're all eating Weight Watchers ice cream sandwiches, and Carl's trying to figure out where the show is. So he starts the show at the beginning, and I'm like, oh my God, how long am I going to be here? Yeah, these guys are geniuses. I love it, but I'm here for 2 hours. I hope they have more ice cream sandwiches. So he finally starts the show, right? All right, and then the phone rings, and Carl picks it up, and he goes, hello? Yes, it was great. He's still here. Hold on. And he goes, it's Mel Brooks. And he hands me the phone, and I'm like, hello? And all I hear is Mel Brooks go, 80%, right?
Wow. Man.
And I said, maybe 85. He goes, all right, maybe 85. Put Carl back on. So I put Carl back on, and from what I could tell, they had an argument about whether or not Carl could roast his own chicken for about 5 minutes. And then I walk out of Carl's house with George, you know, because he's going to his car, I'm going to my car. And George goes, what did Mel Brooks say? And I said, well, he said Carl was about 80%. And George goes, he tells the truth. And that was that.
Did you ever see the list of Jewish people in music?
You know, I had to go before that happened, Dave. He looked tired, but it's amazing how lucid they are. I mean, Mel and him, geniuses, and still very
Well, we're
quick.
talking about the podcast, 400 episodes of the podcast, and also the season finale of the IFC show called Maron, self-titled, which will take place tomorrow at 10 p.m. Good to see you again, Marc.
Great to see you.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Dave.
much. Congratulations on everything. We'll be right back with Jaws, everybody.